welcome to session number 5. Today we're going to be talking about the way of the Methodist, and I brought along a special friend to accompany us. This is Reverend John Wesley, and this is a special treat of mine that I was given when I left a church that I served previously, and it travels with me different places in my office. Sometimes it even goes with me into the sanctuary for special sermons. He's a reminder to me of how important John Wesley was in his culture and eventually in the world. John Wesley was a person of much social change and gave a lot to the world. So I want us as a people called Methodists to understand a little bit about who John Wesley was and what he gave to this movement in England. He was born in 1703 to a pastor's family. His father, Samuel, was a parish priest in the Church of England. John Wesley grew up as one of 15 children, and so his mother, right along with that fact, she's probably a saint, but she was very involved in her children's education, took time to educate personally each one of those 15 children. John Wesley grew up knowing many of the classical disciplines, being able to speak several languages, and so he went to college at an early age, pursued ordination. His brother Charles also was with him at the same school, and when they were there together, they began what was known as the Holy Club. This was a group of students at Oxford who pursued scheduled and rigorous spiritual disciplines with the goal of spiritual awakening. Many of their peers looked on them and made fun of them because they were so methodical. And it was interesting because that group of people that known as the Holy Club decided that instead of seeing that as a term of derision, they would claim it for themselves and say, that's right, we are Methodists. We are methodical in our approach to spiritual awakening and renewal. And so that's how we got our name, the Methodists. During this time in his life, Mr. Wesley was on a painful search for God's reassuring presence. He wanted to know that he was truly loved by God, and then he wanted to be able to live in the joy of that knowing. Instead, what happened for him was the harder he tried, the more elusive this joy felt to him. His church, the Church of England, told him that deeds were the way to heaven. Fortunately, Mr. Wesley at this point in his life encountered some believers from other traditions who assured him that one day, if he was faithful to his walk in Christ, he might also know that same assurance that they seemed to have in their life as well. And so that assurance came for Mr. Wesley on the night of May 24th, 1738. He was at a Bible study in London on Aldersgate Street, and he wrote of this moment in his journal that evening, and this has been known as one of the turning points in the Methodist movement. This is what John Wesley said about his experience on Aldersgate Street. In the evening, I went very unwillingly to a society in Aldersgate Street, where one was reading Luther's preface to the Epistle to the Romans. About 9:15, while he was describing the change which God works in the heart through faith in Christ, I felt my heart strangely warmed. I felt I did trust in Christ, Christ alone for my salvation. And an assurance was given me that he had taken away my sins, even mine, and saved me from the law of sin and death. At this point in his life, Mr. Wesley developed a lot more confidence, and he understood the importance of moving beyond deeds. And because he had freedom in his life and faith in Christ, he was able to try some untested, even untried methods for reaching others with this good news of Jesus Christ. He, along with a few of his colleagues, they were wildly successful. They went to the people that the Church of England refused to reach out to, particularly the poor, particularly those who worked in the mines in England that were supporting the Industrial Revolution that was changing the face of Europe at that point in time. Wesley felt a real passion for helping these folks not only come to a saving knowledge of faith in Jesus Christ, but also helping them grow up in that faith. So in good Methodist fashion, he placed them in small groups called classes. Each class had a leader, one who showed himself faithful and mature as a member of the group, and it was these class leaders that formed the leadership structure for the larger Methodist societies. This ability to structure, both in leadership and in function, formed the Methodist movement and allowed it to grow in a sustainable way, making sure that those who were coming to faith in Christ were also being discipled in a life of faith. So I wanted you to know a little bit more about this amazing man of faith in our tradition. We teach our confirmands about him, some of his key tenets of faith, so they'll know who we are as Methodists. Here are a few of the key tenets of faith that are really unique to John Wesley, and they've also become important to me throughout the years. Number one, John Wesley was a both-and person. He was a master at holding two seemingly contradictory ideas in tension and insisting that both had importance. For example, he believed that a faithful Christian needed both an inward assurance of God and outward expressions of faithfulness. He insisted that followers of Christ have both a personal and a social holiness. Number two, John Wesley really believed in lay leadership. He developed his leaders from those who had come up through the ranks of his system of groups that were known as classes, and he decided that someone was ready for more responsibility when they showed they could effectively handle what had been given to them in a previous assignment. He did not look to clergy to provide the leadership for this Methodist movement. He looked for the laity who had found hope in Jesus Christ, been a part of his small group system, and been discipled and raised up to be leaders of those who were coming behind them as converts in the faith. Number three, John Wesley really believed in accountability. He perceived that God's call in a person's life is ongoing, and he required that people continue to show forth the fruit of conversion. He required participation in these small groups known as classes, and he asked his class leaders about the signs of faithfulness in those participants in their classes. If people made the choice to stop growing, then they could no longer participate with the Methodists. And finally, number four, John Wesley was a stickler for measurement, and he wanted to measure the right things. It would be important to note that Mr. Wesley encountered a lot of resistance from the church of his upbringing, the Church of England. There were many in that religious structure that were not happy with his methods of renewal and revisioning who the church was to be. In addition, he encountered a lot of resistance from those in his class system that didn't like how strict he was about accountability. But Mr. Wesley, again, was fanatical about measuring. And in the end, he was able to stay the course because he could show results and effectiveness in being able to not only help people come to a saving faith in Jesus Christ, but then disciple them in living that faith throughout the rest of their lives. See, the more I learn about John Wesley, the more I appreciate him and his commitment. He certainly was not a warm fuzzy, but he led well, and the fact that we are still around today is a testament to the sustainability of his method. When Wesley died in 1791, he was 88 years old, and these were his final words. The best of all is, God is with us. So as you think about what it means to be a people called Methodist, I want to give you a few questions to discuss in your group. Question number one, do you know anything about John Wesley's life that was not mentioned in the lesson that would be helpful for the group to know? Question number two, what are the reasons that you are a United Methodist Christian? And question number three, what questions do you still have about the United Methodist Church?